Hi. So, welcome to part three of the employer employee relationship. So, in part one, we talked about understanding, the differences and why this relationship matters. Part two, we really talked about, as a manager, how do you address your team and understanding this conflict that occurs between these two. In part three, I want to talk about how the manager should essentially talk with management about this relationship. Because again, if you remember, there's an inherent conflict between the employer and employee. They're thinking of things differently. They have different goals, even if the goals are to make the company successful. There's a different focus and a different perspective on it. So, a lot of times managers think, hey, it's my job to relate to the employee, but they don't think about that managing up part, which is really important. Now, honestly, sometimes there is, I won't say sometimes, most of the time, there isn't a huge amount of influence a manager has. In other words, if you walk up to, you know, a senior VP and you say, hey, you shouldn't say this because of my employees, they're going to listen to you, but probably not take your advice. Even if you get that access, again, because of the way they're thinking. So you have to be a little more persuasive about it and realistic about your expectations. So the first thing that I really coach managers on what to do is discuss with their manager and any senior person that they have good access to, um, the impact it has and the difficulty it causes you. So in other words, you don't want to go up there and say, "Hey, my employees don't like it." When you say that, well, if it's the truth or it's what they're being told, they're going to say, I understand, but, and they're going to keep doing it. However, if you can say to them in a very clear cut way, hey, when you do X, that makes my job in terms of engaging them harder, and here is why. Maybe you could try doing this instead. It's complicated. It's hard to do. Um, but really being able to explain that impact to you and how you're really trying to help the company gets to its goals. You're trying to get your results, and what they're doing or saying is hampering that because that's not what they want to do, right? They're not looking up and saying, "Hey, we know that this is a goal, but let's just make it really, really hard on them. Hey, that'll be fun." No, that's not what's happening. So what you really have to do is think about it and say, okay, how do I explain this in a way that they understand, in a way that helps them? And that's that persuasion. For example, let's say you have a management that's going to do a change in policy, and it's a policy that's not going to be real popular. Okay, it's something people are going to grumble with. You can go to them and say, you know what? I realize you're thinking about this policy and you have your financial or your performance reasons for it, whatever it is. But I just want you to understand what my team is gonna do, how that's gonna impact my team, how they're gonna react, um, and and discuss how when that reaction comes, it's harder to keep them engaged. It's harder to reach that goal. Um, whether that be getting rid of a perk, taking away a tool of theirs. They may go, well, we're going to stop paying for the software, but that software is critical to your team. You've got to make that case. You've got to make that argument. And it can't be overly emotional because that's where they're going to be like, well, I understand that, but this is a business decision. You've got to kind of couch those terms and you got to figure out how they're communicating to you. And again, this is understanding styles. If you can understand the style of your manager or the manager above them, you can give them the tools and the information they need. Um, so, for example, if there was something being decided at the upper level and I didn't have direct impact to it, but my boss maybe did, even if they weren't a heavy influencer, but they had contact to it, I might say, here's some information I'd love for you to pass up, or if you could help me get this to them. And then communicate in the style to your manager and to that other person. And those may be different things. I may say to my manager who's very, you know, likes things verbally, right? Doesn't like to do a lot of reading, doesn't like a lot of stats, doesn't like a lot of numbers. I might go to them and say, hey, I've got this information. I know that your boss really likes data, right? And likes that information and likes it written on a PowerPoint. I know it's not your style. So I'm going to talk you through this and explain it to you, but I'd really love it if you could give this specific information. Here's the data I've done. Here's the, PowerPoint presentation and really do that as you're thinking, because you're not only communicating to your boss, what you need, you are then communicating in a style that will help him or her communicate up to there, right? If you just give them something that communicates to them and ask them to do it, that's extra work. But if I say, hey, I'm going to give this to you in the format you like, and I'm also going to give it to you so that it's real easy for you to deliver, that's going to make a huge difference. So, like I said, there's not much you can do except communicate that up. Then, once you've done that, you do have to communicate back to your team. Hey, here's what I've done and said. I don't know if it's going to make a difference, but I want you to know that I am communicating up as far as I can go. Now, if you're in a bigger company, like I said, you're probably not going to get access to the decision makers, and that's okay. You've just got to figure out where you can go. In smaller companies, you may have direct access to it, which case you can go directly to the CEO, senior VP, but you don't want to go around your boss, right? Let your boss know what you're doing. And your boss may go, I don't want you to do that. You have to respect that and have that discussion and come to that agreement. But you've got to make sure you're communicating up for your team and then communicating back to your team. Once they know that you are fighting for them, I hate to use the term fighting, but you're taking their thoughts into consideration and you're trying to help them, you're going to earn their respect a little bit. They may go, well, you didn't get anything done. Nothing really happened. And that's maybe true, but at least they see that you've tried. They see that you've done something. And that's usually half the battle. So as you move forward, just remember that you want to, go to your boss, communicate how it's impacting the work of your team, right? Their feelings, their attitudes, what impact it's going to have, and what you may need from them or suggestions for them, and really give them the tools to do that. Um, it can be a lot of work, particularly in touchy situations, right? Sometimes it's hard to get data. Sometimes it's hard to figure out the story. Sometimes it's hard to even understand where that decision's coming from, and that may be part of it. Hey, you're making this decision. My team doesn't like it. Can you tell me where it came from? Give me more details. Give me more information. And then they can figure that out. And once they do, you can go, oh, let me figure out how to explain it to my team and how to communicate with it. Um, but you do have that responsibility to manage up. So that kind of ends part 3 of this. But I look forward to your comments, your questions. Put anything in those comments, like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment on things. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.